Welcome back, everybody. For this deep dive, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to step back from our usual look at like AI in the workplace and in schools and all that. And we're going to look at something a little more personal.
Yeah, I think this will be interesting. It's fascinating how AI is really prompting us to rethink even those very human-centered activities.
Right. And, you were sharing some stories about how AI is kind of creeping into even your family life, I think.
Yeah.
And those were really fascinating. And I think a lot of our listeners can probably relate to this as well. You were telling me about trying one of those AI story generators with your kid at bedtime.
Yeah. Initially I was really impressed. AI was able to just come up with a little story, a polished story in seconds. But then you said something that I thought was interesting. You said that it felt kind of empty compared to your usual routine of, brainstorming stories together.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, and I totally relate to that. I remember when my niece was little, we used to make up these crazy stories together.
Oh, yeah.
And they were all over the place. They didn't really make sense, but we had so much fun.
Right.
We were both so invested in creating these stories together.
And that's really what Heath and Heath would call sticky experience.
Yeah.
Their research shows that the ideas that really stay with us, the ones that become really memorable, often have that human element, a story that we can connect with emotionally.
Right.
AI can generate a story that's technically sound,
Yeah.
but it just doesn't have that same shared context, that spark of co-creation. That's what makes human stories so powerful.
It's kind of like the difference between, a beautifully decorated cake from the store and when you make it home with your kid,
Yeah.
even if it comes out a little messy.
Exactly. You're both covered in flour, laughing, making
Yeah.
memories. That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, did using the AI rob you of a chance to create those memories with your child?
That's a good point.
Did it kind of like shortcut a process that was actually more valuable than the end product?
Yeah, it did deliver a story, but at what cost?
Right. And this brings us to that second story you shared about using AI to create a poem
Yes.
to celebrate the end of a big project. You were telling me about how you felt proud at first when you showed the AI poem to people, but then you felt awkward when people were praising you for it.
Yeah, it was so strange. Like, I was happy that people liked it,
Mm-hmm.
but it felt weird because I hadn't really done the work, you know?
It almost like the praise felt unearned. Like
Exactly.
you hadn't really earned it because you didn't create it yourself.
Right.
It's funny because on the one hand, it's incredible that AI can mimic human creativity. Like it can do these things that we thought only humans could do.
Yeah.
But then there's this nagging feeling like, did I cheat?
Yeah, and it made me think about that research by Carol Dweck, about growth mindset.
Yes.
Her work shows how important it is to struggle to really grapple with challenges in order to learn and grow.
Exactly.
So if we're always using AI to do the hard work for us, are we missing out on that growth?
It's like the difference between, actually climbing a mountain and just looking at a picture of one.
Right.
The picture is beautiful, but it's the climb that really, pushes you to your limits.
Yeah.
And that feeling when you finally reach the top,
Hmm.
that sense of accomplishment, you just can't get that from a picture.
And it's not just about personal growth either, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about the nature of creativity itself. We tell stories to connect with each other, to make sense of the world. We write poetry to express our emotions.
Exactly. It's like these are deeply human needs.
It feels like AI can give us the what, but not the why. Like it can create a poem that rhymes, but it doesn't understand the emotions behind it.
Yeah, it's like AI can make a technically perfect poem, but it can't capture the human experience.
Right. And so this goes back to that question I keep asking myself.
Yeah, when do we invite AI in?
When do we let AI do the work and when do we do it ourselves?
I think it's all about finding the right balance. We want to take advantage of AI's amazing capabilities, but we don't want to lose those human elements, those things that make us who we are.
So it's really about making conscious choices, deciding when it makes sense to use AI and when it's better to do things the old-fashioned human way.
Yeah, and I think it's especially important to think about this when it comes to those really personal parts of our lives, like you were talking about, those moments that have always been about human connection and creativity.
Because it feels like those are the things that really make life meaningful.
Absolutely. And so we have to be careful not to let AI take those things away from us.
It really feels like we're kind of wrestling with like a really big question here.
Yeah.
It's not just, AI versus humans. It's about what it even means to be human in the first place.
I completely agree with you. And I think these stories that you shared about, using AI for bedtime stories and writing poems highlight something really important.
Mm.
These aren't just tasks, you know? It's not just about getting something done. It's about connection, you know? It's about having these shared experiences, and it's about growing as a person.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny when I think about those moments in my life where I felt, really alive, really engaged.
Mm.
They often involved a lot of struggle,
Hmm.
like pushing myself outside of my comfort zone.
Absolutely. Think about those moments when you have a creative breakthrough, you know,
Yeah.
when you've been working on a problem forever and you finally figure it out.
Right.
Or those times when you really connect with someone on a deep level.
Yeah.
Those experiences can be messy, you know?
Uh-huh.
They're not always predictable and they're certainly not always efficient,
Right.
but they're so incredibly rewarding.
So maybe it's not about, trying to avoid those difficult moments altogether.
Right.
Maybe it's about choosing our struggles carefully.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Figuring out when AI can actually enhance our lives
Yeah.
and when it might actually be taking something valuable away from us.
It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Like you said before,
Yeah.
it's that balance between embracing the power of AI, but also holding on to those things that make us human.
I think that's the key, you know? Sometimes the most rewarding path isn't the easiest one.
Mhm.
It's the path that challenges us to grow, you know?
Right.
To connect with each other, to create something that really means something.
Well, this has been such a great conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's really made me rethink my relationship with AI.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. It's really all about making those choices carefully.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thinking about not just the outcome, but the process and, holding on to those things that make us human, those things that make life worth living.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this, reflection. I know it's given me a lot to think about.
Of course.
And I'm sure our listeners feel the same. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep those human sparks flying.